could, before even starting the round off, have them practice cartwheel rebounding onto, just to practice that push off.
I do a lot of different cartwheels, like
And then go to round off.
I do cartwheel, I do run hurdle cartwheel, faster feet cartwheel.
Yeah.
I do a lot of them before going there. So
Yeah, we do
Is this on?
push away cartwheel, which we push off your hand before you catch. And I actually get more repulsion from that than I do from round. And I try and get kids to do push away cartwheel and then bring your feet together, and they almost always land like this and over rotate. But as soon as you say round off, they don't do that anymore.
Messes up. You know, boys gymnastics routine requires cartwheel, and then it's a cartwheel bring your feet together, like a round off. So it's just, it's one of the steps, and so they're automatically good at it.
Okay.
If you teach a round off too soon, then sometimes
It messes
Well,
up.
what we're trying to get at is what is it
from
that
doing
you
round
use
offs
to
and not
determine
cartwheels, they have to learn.
what is it you use to determine who's ready for a round off?
Right.
What is it that you use as criteria to determine who's going to learn a round off?
Well, if they can push off of their arms, or like if they can get up the end.
And the cartwheel push
Yeah.
off a little bit?
Yeah, because if they're still just clumping down, they're not ready.
That's almost like a drill.
I said now she's videotaping.
I don't mean like a full handstand pop. I just mean like, yeah, like when they can stand their body up without struggling.
Yeah, I agree.
One of the points I get to with kids is teaching them that their leg is so much stronger than their upper body that they can tip themselves almost all the way into a handstand using just that front leg, as opposed to putting your hands down and then kicking up. And I do a lot of that, right? I'm just focusing on controlling this, forward and backward, and also learning that to lift your chest, you just keep this line straight, and as you lower your leg, you bring your chest up. And in reverse, if I lift my leg, it puts my chest down. Because a lot of kids will go here, and then they do that in reverse. So right off the bat, when I'm teaching the donkey kick, I'll try to get kids to do that. Hold your leg up and stay there, and then if they're a little bit older, I'll try and get them to hold their leg tight so that it pulls you up. Because that comes in handy for that push away cartwheel and the round off.
We spent a lot of time on skills, and doing 10 of them before you even doing 10 handstands and stuff like that. But I still have trouble with some I go through round off.
Another thing I'll teach with handstands that are different than cartwheels is lunge and push off the front leg rather than kick the back leg. I'm going to kick the leg on a cartwheel, but on a handstand I teach from this position that they've learned from day one is they're going to push from the front leg and just lift the back leg for handstands, and then the cartwheels are going to kick over. What about beam? How do you know when a kid's ready for a round off on beam?
I have them do
It's hard on the line.
Say it again, off the panel mat?
up onto the panel mat.
From the floor onto?
Yeah. So I know they can block off and land up.
Alright, so this gets into have why you design certain stations. So you do a round off where you're trying to go uphill onto a paddle mat, right? How about off the paddle mat? What does that teach?
Round off.
This teaches the push off, the arms. They do the round off the paddle mat. You can let them know what it feels like to do a snap down. So think of more stations. What do you want? What are the parts of the round off that you're trying to teach?
The landing.
I do like handstand snap downs.
I think a handstand snap down is harder than a round off.
Yes.
A lot of kids, especially
Are we
regular
talking
kids.
about a round off on the beam or a round off on the floor? Because that would change things.
Right, yeah.
The round off I teach on the floor, I teach with the beam in mind.
Right. But like if I want them to do it on the beam, then I want their landing to be pushed down.
Oh, I see what you mean.
But if I'm doing it on the floor, then I want them to rebound. Or, well, I mean, if you're doing a round off dismount off the beam, then yeah, I want it like they do it on the floor.
That's what I was thinking, round off this round. So I was thinking, we're all thinking different thoughts.
I work with
That's
a
why I
lot of
said
round offs on the beam.
What that brings me to
At that level.
is the use of the lines on the floor. Make a lot of use of those lines, because when you make the kids stay straight and lunge straight, later on when you go to beam, it's going to be easier for them to transfer those skills over. Also, it requires them to do things better when they have to use the line. And we have plenty of kids who look like they're doing really good, and they run down the hurdle and do a round off, but they'll go off the line on a hurdle, and then go off the other line on the cartwheel, the round off.
I like these kids.
What is the proper
always
hand
call that the
placement
line
for a round off? Yeah, because you want to turn it around more.
Well,
The
what's the
backyard
point?
cartwheel.
I think I
What's
know.
the point of a round off?
To tumble out of it?
Generate
Generate
power.
power for whatever's coming out.
Turn you around?
It's a connecting skill.
What you're doing is you're taking your forward momentum
There you go, Scott.
and turning it so that it continues into your backwards tumbling. So you want to keep up your speed, your power and momentum, and turn efficiently so you don't lose any power or direction. So that round off does a half turn and it begins the rotation. The rotation for a back handspring and the back somersaults of any kind.
Right, when your leg comes around the side, you lose all your power and direction and movement.
But when you get into round offs that are going to be technically correct, that round off has to turn over, meaning
Fast.
that it's got to arrive, and this is the highest level. It's got to arrive already in a position to punch into the back handspring.
Right. So your feet are behind, in front of you.
Right? So at the Olympic level, that's what they're doing. They're rotating, and their feet don't land, bend, and jump. They hit the floor and punch.
Right.
Very quick.
Right. That's correct.
So that's the ultimate, and you don't really get that much in classes. But if you always push in that direction, you're going to get good round offs. The hand placement, I go with my cartwheel. I find that I get better push off with the cartwheel push away and teach the round off from that, then say, we're going to do round offs, show them a round off, and have them do what they think it is.
I got another question for you for the hands. I always teach with the hands, one and then the other one return. The second one return. So it's one and then the other one return. I don't know if we put that in for the cartwheel. So you go back to the cartwheel, then with the round off, it's the same. So one and then the other one.
Well, I draw the cartwheel. Right? Cartwheel, spokes
So
are
the
evenly,
straight, the other one.
evenly spread. That's to spread the force out over a distance as it rolls.
Yeah,
So a round off, we don't want to do hands hopping and together. You want to spread that out. An analogy I use with older kids and teachers is picture a treadmill, long treadmill, where you're running and tumbling, but from the side you're not moving, the floor is moving. How would you do your round off differently? Or round off back handspring? What would you do different? Now the floor is coming at you. If you drop that arm, right, that floor is going to push you into here and you're going to fly over.
So you want to push further?
Yeah, the faster it goes, the more you have to reach out, and the straighter this line has to be.
Our years, number 101 gymnastics.
That line has to be straight because that's where the strength is in the alignment and posture.
The lines are here, you can use them for your cartwheel. You start here and you try to reach to the other side.
Say it again?
See these two lines? So if a kid is standing here and you're saying, okay, we're gonna make our cartwheels longer, they're gonna stretch and try to land on the other side.
Well, I'm talking just about hand placement. Why I teach hand placement the way I do is I want to spread that push off over more time, because if I'm going to be running really fast and I put my hands down close together, it's going to be very late.
What I do, I have a drill. I call it the sneaky cartwheel. And what they have to do is, once they've mastered, like they know to start like this for a cartwheel, I make them go like this, or I guess it's this, 1, 2, 3, and then it reinforces 1, 3. It's really good for your chinkos.
What do you call it?
Sneaky cartwheel, because when they do it, it looks like they're sneaking out on the cartwheel.
I like that, Kristen. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to the song.
Stolen.
1, 2, 3, 4. That already enforces that you're gonna have your X. You know what I mean? Because you're not putting your hands up. It's 1, 2.
But back to the analogy about the treadmill. Like I said, if you drop that lead arm and the treadmill's coming fast, it will push your ankle close and you're going to fall onto this arm and not get off.
I'm not talking about drop.
I know, but I want to go back to that idea because when I go back to the line, I go back to the cartwheel because I want them to do a 1-2 push-off just like they do on a push-away cartwheel. And I want them to do that in their round-offs because that push-off lasts longer. And if it lasts longer, it's going to have more momentum behind it.
Right, but if you did the sneaky, I'm just asking a question now. Doesn't that break body angle? 'Cause
Yeah, but
what
that's
you
not-
just showed.
That's not.
It's just reinforcing the
It's
1-2
reinforcing
concept.
Okay,
the 1,
so I
2.
gotcha.
And it's actually a drill for your chinkos.
Okay.
That's what it's actually used for, but you could use it for round offs on the floor.
Right, and you're just trying to
Yeah.
reinforce the 1, 2.
Yeah, and it
Like the
forces
song
them
I
when they come off, like you saw someone do it, it forces them to block off the floor because of where they push their
I
hands.
kind of like that because I see too many half-ons.
To
I see a lot, because they're
Right,
trying
dive,
to
where
clutch
they
and
dive, right? They dive
Yeah,
and
they
land on
dive.
2 hands.
They do
That's
too
where
many
they lose
half-ons.
power. When they dive and turn and they
It's
land
almost
on
like
their
they're
hands, it's a landing. The hand placement is a push-off, it's not a landing. That's the concept that's really important to teach. The difference between landing and a takeoff. A round-off, I'm not going to land on my hands, I'm not even going to land on my feet. This is a push-off and this is a takeoff.
Right. There is no way.
If you say landing, you're going to get round-offs that land. Then you lose a lot of that power.
I wanted to just figure out if I usually do this drill with the younger, even up to first, second graders, even third graders sometimes. I'll put an 8-incher at the end, and before that, I'll put a line or a star to tell them not to pass that. Their front leg in the lunge is where that star goes, or before, and it forces them to kind of reach out up to the mat. But I have them, for those that have a hard time putting their legs together into the round off of the cartwheel, because a lot of them, you have them round off and they can't put their legs together. I have them start landing on their belly straight, and then onto the knees, and then eventually onto their feet. I don't know if that's old school or if that still could be applied.
Again, if you take it to the highest level, if you're aware of what the technique is at the highest levels, and you're always shooting in that direction, the feet are not going to come together in the handstand. They're going to come together
on the floor.
right before they contact the
before they
floor.
get
Very last second.
Just last second.
Right? So they maximize the rotation of the whole body,
Right.
so they're off balance and in the direction of their back handspring or flip.
What
So-
about the round off, feet snap in, run backwards with arms up? Because that teaches the feet in right away.
Round off, where you just round off and just run out of it.
Right, feet back and then the feet are in
Right,
right in that
catch
automatic.
themselves.
Because I try regular round off, they always land like they're going for pack back tuck late. So I say, throw your arms up, run backwards. Everybody does it.
Here's what I see the most: round off, jump,
Right.
round off, rebound.
Right.
To kids who don't have hamstrings or don't have very good hamstrings, and they do round off, rebound, but back handstrings don't rebound. Back hamstrings go backwards. So if I'm teaching a round off, I want to teach a round off, so it's going to go backwards. And after I get that, I'll introduce round off block. This is a big difference in that you start rebounding before they learn hamstrings, they're going to rebound into a hamstring. And then you run into trouble that way.
You can have them do the round off with an 8-incher in the back, and then just snap, like keep their body low and just push back and land in this direction to just get that momentum going backwards.
I'm going to follow.
It sounds like you're talking about the round off. you
Round
bring
off,
your feet in,
yeah,
fall
round
to-
off. You
fall
put your
to the
you
cheek,
put your
right.
feet
Like
just before the
into a
8-incher,
pit?
and then you push.
Or wedge mat.
Oh, wedge.
doesn't
You
matter.
fall in
Snap.
like
wouldn't land in a pipe.
No, not flat back. You stay close
Even
because.
the one that's just to stick with legs out.
Oh,
Yeah, it's like,
You have to
you know.
oh, but I do teach
So
flat back.
if they're doing a round off, because you want, this is knowing that eventually you want them to attach a back handspring, not a, back up. So they do their round off, and from this position, they're pushing back, and they land in this position here. Right, pushing back and staying in this position, because a lot of times, if you're practicing round off, springing up, their back handsprings are gonna go up really, really high, as opposed to going far back.
Right, so you're teaching how to get their feet through
Feet in, right,
separately from getting your chest out.
right.
Two different goals. Which is
Just
both
get you one
hard.
part. That's okay.
That's the hardest thing to learn is how to get your feet through
Right.
and the chest up.
Okay, well,
But I
And
found
the
that
concept that
again,
I teach first, and I'll attack first, I don't always get it taught first, but I'll go after first, is if your chest comes up, your feet will automatically come through.
Right.
But if I pull my feet through, that won't get my chest up. The most important part of all this is to learn how to get your chest off the floor, or off the table, or off the beam. And then the snap down part of the legs is kind of easy if you're squeezing it tight.
That's why I
Well, it was just more like when I was for the pushing.
Round up and just go right to your back.
It would be before the opening up.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Slant back.
It would be like
old drill for the super hard.
Right.
You know, slapping it.
Yeah.
But I still like the running backwards. Because you snap it up fast
Okay.
and either end is running
Got
back.
it. Okay.
They-
Doing that.
Okay, so I want to go into, because round-offs, once you get to round-offs and that kind of thing, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Taking a variation on the round-off, what kind of drills can you set up for problem solving? Because there's drills that you
Round off
can,
problem solving.
whatever.
Do a mountain climber round off, where they have to start their round off. From
Oh,
here.
yeah.
And that is going to solve what problem?
Over their head.
Yeah.
Those kids who put their hand off to the side.
And then if they can do that on the line, I'll
go
set up
back,
2
right?
blocks like this, and they have to stay in between the 2 mats. Otherwise, they'll.
But if you go back and we look at that mistake, what causes that? Those kids who put their legs off, their hands off to the side.
Yeah, so.
they're not on the line.
Well,
They're not in that.
what happens
real-
is they can't get down to the floor this way. They don't feel strong, so they put their hands here because that's easier. But now the legs go around,
Yes, well done.
right? So that problem is comes back to what I was saying before: learning how to control
The
the
Lord.
body weight more with that front leg. And then the way I solve it for drill is I raise the floor. Put a paddle mat up, they do a run, they put their hands on the paddle mat, land on the floor, you saw that drill. And they get a strong snap down, they go backwards, and they know what it feels like to do it better.
That's why it's a short round, I think. I have them land on the floor and then I have them go onto the Asia. So it's like a paddle mat for Asia.
Right.
The only problem with that though, they can still put their foot too close to the
So
paddle.
that's so you could just not use
I mean, hit it?
No, like going so close that they're not really stretching forward. It's not-
You mean in the beginning with here?
Yeah, in the lunge, if they're running to it, they can still, or they, you know,
The way I solve that is I take the bottom panel, open it up. So the panel's here, and they can't touch that panel, but they have to get their hands on the paddle mat.
yeah, that's the.
And then I also draw a straight line on there for the cartwheel hands, which I always go over.
So now it's hard, it's fine.
What?
What are the other problems in a round off?
The snap?
Dragging the second hand.
Oh, I hate that.
What causes that?
Not blocking, where their hands are in the wrong spot.
But it's not because they don't want to, but they don't understand something, right? So you gotta go back and figure out what is it they don't understand. And I find it almost always comes down to how to get their hands down to the ground, how to feel like they're controlling that, right? And also understand that they're not landing on their hands, they're pushing off their
Right,
hands.
everything's a whatever you're doing, the start of
But that you gotta fix in the car, that's sliding, you gotta fix in the car
If
before you
they're
even get to it.
sliding, right,
You gotta fix that before you even get to around.
if they're sliding, that hand is not pushing off.
Right.
So, is there a station to handle that, to deal with that issue?
I still like the paddle mat for that because you bring it up higher and then it's easy.
Yeah, hammer, straight line over it.
Right. That
I
goes
put
off.
I put hands on the floor.
Because that-
Hands
You
on
put
the
the
floor.
hands on the
because
floor
they
and
don't trust
you
the
can't move
legs.
it. You touch it and then
I think a lot of them don't trust that they're strong enough to land on their feet.
So most of the mistakes I see is a diving approach into the hand placement, where they kind of kick and jump, but their hands aren't on the ground yet,
Yeah.
right? So I tell the kids, and it's not true, but I tell them I want to see this. I want them to be able to push off their front leg, kick their back leg, and push off their arms all at the same time. Right? So that, and they won't get to that point, but if they're trying to, they're going to get a much stronger push off. And they get their hands down to the floor better.
also see when they're doing it, a lot of them go like that, like the back and everything. They don't know how to push to stay tight through the movement. I can see that on the
They're
movement. Still
usually not in the right line.
Now, along the lines of the people who rebound up from a round off are the people who land with their arms up but bent over. A lot of kids think that this is the most important part, when really being up is the most important part.
Well,
Having your arms up is the last thing that they're going to learn. That's the first thing. So when you have kids lifting their arms up, they're going to pull their chest towards the ground.
This one person teaches so far.
That's how they do the cartwheels too.
Doing it off the panel mat is one easy way, and sometimes higher. So they get the feel of their chest rising and how much easier it is to get your feet under when your chest is moving. But with a lot of little kids, they're just not strong enough. So they just spend more time on stations like that until they develop the strength. What other technical issues are there in a round off?
Sometimes they cross their foot over to one side.
In the lunge?
Yeah,
For example,
Or their
I think
hands.
that's like that's a YMCA thing. You gotta go forward and make that.
You mean
If they hurdle up instead of.
Yeah, I hate that.
stiletto.
That hurts your back, doesn't it? When your hips and everything else.
Well, the way I deal with that is way back in when I'm teaching that donkey kick, and I teach the lunge. I'm teaching, the first thing I teach is I want them to be really straight, and I say fall. And
Oh,
if
so
they
you push
fall, you don't have to tell them how far to move their leg. It's going to be underneath your chest. And they learn that. And then they fall into a cartwheel, they fall into a round off,
You
they
can
fall
actually
into
push them,
hand
you know which leg
placements.
they're gonna use.
Huh?
If you push them, you know which leg they're gonna use, which side of it.
That's what I do.
Oh,
Do you do that
I
when they're
didn't
good
know.
at the cartwheel? You start having them do it like that, or
I have them start handstands like that, cartwheels, aerials, front handstrings, round off, everything starts from a fall.
okay.
And then when we do a hurdle, I want them falling off balance into and out of the hurdle. Right? So when they get a feel for falling and how much it helps them to go over, because they're stretched, like I said, I start all the way back with those donkey kicks. That's where I start teaching hands up fall.
I teach
And-
back handsprings the same way. Fall backwards, as soon as your foot steps, that's when you
But
push.
it comes down to concept. And you got lots of little kids who have no conceptual powers whatsoever, and you're trying to teach an advanced concept to a 7-year-old.
Yeah, but at the
Can't do
same
it.
time, that 7-year-old's gonna go like that and have no idea what you're saying.
Right, so you got to
You have to
create
break it
feedback
down
loops,
so they do understand it.
They're like,
create stations that force them to do
4-year-old's
something
doing that.
correct.
Exactly.
and then fall on their face.
Bang.
It's a natural instinct to step and catch yourself.
Except for a few.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
except for here. What do you understand?
Every now and then you get a kid that
It's kinda
actually
like
just
what he
goes.
said when you do drills over and over and over and over and over.
More than we like
Put it
to.
all
Miss
together.
Amy said
Seems
to
like you're
fall.
looking
You
straight
told me
one
to
more.
fall.
And that's the idea.
Really,
It's
it's
not that you're
reinforced
teaching
it.
that. If you're a person that's only teaching preschool, you get some because the doctor told them to come here.
Wow.
But you know, it doesn't matter what the level is, you can do something to make that kid feel like they're good.
I know, but I'm just saying, if you push that kid, they're gonna fall out of their hand. Well, you get another one that's,
Well-
it depends on what level.
I want to diverge off the round off and go back to limbers and walkovers and progressions for teaching those. Because it'll tie into what we do after that. For
For back walk, for any kind of bridge kick.
before a walkover, I teach limbers.
Right.
Before limbers, you teach
Shoulder
bridges,
over
kick
wrist.
over. So let's come up with stations. The object is to teach a back walkover.
Okay.
And
Right. We're
it
starting
has
from
none of the
beginning.
skills
We're
yet.
starting from on the
Where do you
floor.
start?
Well, if
We're
the
starting
bridge is
from
good, they
line
need to
back
elevate
bridge.
their feet to try to kick.
Gotta be the bridge.
Just do a bridge first.
Just the bridge, right?
So just the bridge.
That's pretty much
What's in the
step number
bag?
one.
Rock shoulders,
Oh.
shoulders over. I teach rocking back and forth, not up and down.
I love that
Shoulders
one. Down
over.
the cheek back. I like that she says, but then again, you need walls. You put it against the wall and leaning back and
No,
then
I'm
walking
talking
against
about
that.
that. I'm talking before that.
So we're not going to put it necessarily in order, but
Okay. his lead.
Now you're pushing off of blocks at different heights, one really high, one lower and lower. And
I
lower.
have them do, it depends again on the age you have, the older ones. They jump with their feet, so they kind of shift their weight. They're in the bridge and they take their feet off the floor.
they rock?
Yeah, rocking back and forth. You can have them, the feet are easier, so I always have them try the feet first, and then eventually when they get better.
And I'll do it with them feet up on a panel mat.
No, not on the floor. So then they go jump feet and hands. Feet. So they're just working on going back and like a.
Another one that I do to help with that is on like your little diagram with the feet up. I put the little rainbow barrel, the smallest barrel, behind, like kind of in front of them, and they have to rock and touch their shoulders to the barrel.
So they're rocking, just touching their shoulders to the barrel.
Yeah. And I'll make them do like 5 and
Or even
When the
brace
wedge-
it against the wall.
See the wedge?
Yeah.
Your chest against the wall.
Yeah.
Take the wedge and bring it to the tip. So you're standing on the tip with your legs slicing your center of gravity closer to the ground. And then arms up, arms back, and have them, and look at their hands. And you're, in the first you're helping, and then back up, and you're helping, and then you say look at your hands and then down. You usually go to
Okay. Are there any other steps
I do bridge walks to keep pushing their shoulders.
Are we just
on
talking
the
about a
floor,
bridge?
right?
So they just
We're trying to
walk
come up
Well-
with as many different drills as possible to teach skills. So
I
that
teach them laying on a block because it's easier to get your shoulders over your wrists when they're higher. Just so they
like
feel.
that, you mean?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Yes, because they feel it. I want them to feel it first.
Okay. One of the first concepts I want kids to learn is shoulders and hips, and this is their nose, so they're facing this way. I want them to push their hips out, and when their hips go forward, their arms go back. Because what they see a lot of times is and then they fall. But if I push my hips forward and don't move my arms move anyway. Except I'm always on balance. So I want them to push their hips forward and bounce as long as possible so they barely fall onto their hands. And I'll have them do it onto a panel mat, onto the incline mat, but I want them to learn how to push their hips forward and also what that does for the back walkover, because I want them to do it in walkovers too.
Yeah, but what about, I saw your feet coming off the floor. That's the, when their feet come off the floor, you're not trying to get to the mat right now. You're just trying to.
I'm just teaching that idea. Pushing your hips open causes your arms to go back.
Okay.
Because a lot of kids see a skill, and what they think is happening has nothing to do with it.
Right.
And if you don't clarify, they're going to do what they think they're seeing.
Right to their
I break it down because when I teach them when they're bending over forward, that their hips, their rear end, is actually just to move over and place their hands on the floor, not fall. They're transferring part of their body weight goes backwards. Now it's the exact opposite with pushing your hips forward. You're pushing body weight forward so that you go down controlled on your hands. There's no fall at all because that means you don't have control.
You can teach it from the knee too and just do
Okay.
abs.
Yeah,
that's
we
hard.
do that.
That's hard.
Remember how to push your hips forward? Push my hand. Keep pushing, now go to your back side.
Oh,
Right, that's how I teach.
love it.
That's how I'll teach it, and push hips forward to get up. So even though she can't do it, I keep talking about that because that's how it's going to be done.
Do it one more
because
time. Do it one more time.
Hips forward,
I love this stuff.
see how arms go back,
I don't like the feet.
and then
though,
hips forward again.
yeah,
And the reasoning,
because they fall. Because
the reasoning is your legs are so much stronger than your upper body that you want to take as much of that weight
But some of the
onto your legs for as long as possible on the way down and
Well,
then on the
because
way
they're
up.
not
doing
doing
this. No, no.
They're
When
only
they
falling
push it
because
up to
they're
their
not
knees and so fall on the
What's
side,
happening
their legs are
is-
buckling. Yeah.
If I push
They
my
are.
hips forward, my shoulders are still over my feet, so I'm still on balance. So I want to stay balanced as long as possible. And when I go to get up,
Come back.
But do you want them to go to the toes? That's the only thing I'm wondering. Do you want
did
them?
I do that?
Yeah, like that.
Well, yeah, I'll teach them. I want them to push to their feet sometimes because I use that later, but not for a walkover or limber.
Yeah, because the only thing I find is when I do that, when they, as soon as they get to the floor, they take their feet off the ground.
I don't want that as part of this, but that's a habit with me.
Oh, okay.
But I do want them to learn that for something else. And then once I have that concept, I push them away from the wall like this so they can't get up by ducking and pushing. And I just say, push your hips forward, and I'll have my hand in front, and when they push their hips forward, they're done.
I also tell them to squeeze their butt while they're in that position.
Well, the
'Cause that
idea
pulls
is I want them to understand that the hips being over your feet is why you stand up. So going backwards, the longer your hips are over your feet, the more control you have. When you want to get up, you want your hips over your feet to get up.
I have tried everything with some of my kids to get their hips open, but they still bend from their back. So how do you?
I put
Yeah,
like
that's
sometimes
what
I
I'm saying. I
put,
think we're saying the same thing.
They bend from. They won't push their hips forward. And they just.
I will actually put like a
And then-
like a block or
Just
something.
that if you have a wall, everybody lines up on the wall. I move their feet out to a certain point, and I want them to push to a stand. And I'll just put my hand. I want them to try and touch my hand with their hips. And if they do that, they'll stand up. But first, you're going to get them ducking, pushing, ducking. You're going to do everything except that. And as soon as they just push their forward, they're going to come right up. So much easier that a light bulb usually goes off.
Once they get that
For some
concept,
reason,
And then I spend a lot of time on that. That's part of every class for a long time. You know, and if I go for the background of the walkover and I see what you're seeing, I go right back to that.
Have you ever taught from a zipper effect? You know, zipper. You have to go each one individually. You can't
Right.
clip here. That's your head coming up before you've even
Oh, I see what
done
you're saying.
hips, stomach, chest. You know, so I make you pretend like they're vertebrae zipping up to the wall.
I don't know, for some reason I'm doing the same thing that what you're doing is kind of what I'm doing, but I don't say it the way you're saying.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's just.
If they get the concept,
Right.
it won't matter too much. But later on, this idea of the hip push becomes important for a lot of reasons. So now when we get to a walkover, back walkover, if I have them push their hips out, and you can try this yourself, if you push hips forward, your front foot comes off the ground. You're not lifting it. I push my hips out, my front leg just comes off the ground.
Yeah, it is. Thank you. Like to take
Right, but a
credit
lot of
for it,
people
but I can't.
think that because they see the hip and the leg move and they think it's a lift. Really, it's all back on the hip again. If you push your hip forward, by the time your hands hit the floor, that leg's going to almost be near a needle if you're flexible. Whereas if I say start with your leg up, you're going to get this.
Right, yeah. It's gonna drop and then, yeah.
So I'm pushing from the ground up. When I push the hips forward, because my hands are moving in the right direction, my leg is moving in the right direction, and I'm on balance on this. And my leg is strong.
What if you tell them to releve on that? Wouldn't that automatically do that?
What?
I would teach it after they have a walkover.
a what?
Yeah, well,
Releve, up on your toe.
And leg up the same. I still don't like doing my back walkovers like that. And I don't really do my back walkovers. Back walkovers.
With the
Yeah,
spot.
you ever see your kids rubbing their backs
I'm
when
not
they
talking
do
about himself,
walkovers?
I'm talking about with
No,
the
I
spot.
thought you meant on route or from route.
No, I'm talking about with the spot, not by itself.
No, we're just saying we never did that as gymnasts.
Oh, we had them in our school, but
The other concept I want to teach them on that walkover is when they lean their shoulders back, their backside is getting shorter and collapsing. And when they open their hips, their front side is getting longer, and taller and tighter and stronger. So I want them to reach up and back, not to collapse and fall back into a walkover.
Right.
And the easiest way, and this is why I miss having a wall, is you start with those walking up and down, all the way down the floor, all the way back up. They build up their strength. They understand how to push their hips out. When the time comes to teach that limber, they're going to learn it in one day.
Yeah. Magic.
Yeah. Or their first try, after 6 months of doing those drills.
yeah, but they like those.
Okay? The front walkover is the exact reverse of the back walkover. Once you put your hands on the floor, preferably in a T shape, like a split handstand, you shift your shoulders instead of the hips, and you rotate the split, and then you push your hip forward until it's over your foot. Once your hips are over your feet, you're standing.
Yeah.
And you can do whatever you want from that point. They don't duck their head or they just push off their, they just push down on the floor and come up. That way you don't get them thinking about ducking their head or throwing their head back or throwing their arms. They understand right from the get-go that it starts at the floor. The control is, wherever you touch the apparatus is where your control is. So I'm tumbling, that's where your control is. Whatever you're touching the floor, shoulders on the front walkover, then it's the hips, and it's just opposite on the back walkover. What time are we looking at?
12:30?
Anything else a good time? The pizza's here. If we want to take a little break and go get pizza, and then we can start back up in a couple minutes.
Good.
Let's do that.
Love it.
What timing?